A boy was protecting two babies from the intense cold under the snow, and when the elderly woman opened the door, she came face to face with a secret that broke her heart. The wind howled furiously, whipping snow against the windows of Mary Claire's old home. The 65-year-old widow curled up deeper into her worn armchair, pulling the shawl tightly around her shoulders. The fire in the fireplace crackled, casting dancing shadows on the faded walls of the living room. Mary Claire looked up from her book, frowning. For a moment, she thought she had heard something beyond the roar of the storm. She waited, motionless, ears alert. There it was again, a faint sound, almost imperceptible, knocking at the door, hesitant, soft, desperate. Mary Claire rose slowly, her bones protesting the sudden movement. She walked to the door, the old floorboards creaking beneath her feet. Her hand hovered over the doorknob as she hesitated, heart pounding. Who could be out there on a night like this? The knocks came again, more urgent this time. Mary Claire took a deep breath and opened the door. A gust of icy air and snow invaded the entryway. Blinking against the cutting wind, Mary Claire lowered her gaze. Her eyes widened. In front of her, shivering violently, stood a boy. He could not have been older than 5. His pale face was stained with frozen tears, his lips blue from cold. But that was not what made Mary Claire gasp. In the boy's arms, precariously wrapped in thin blankets, were 2 babies. The boy looked up at Mary Claire, his gaze a mixture of fear and fierce determination. He held the babies closer to his chest, as if afraid someone might snatch them away. Please," he stammered, teeth chattering. Help!" Mary Claire acted on instinct. She knelt down, ignoring the pain in her knees, and gently pulled the children inside. The boy resisted for a moment before allowing her to guide them into the warm living room. Come, Mary Claire murmured, leading them toward the fireplace. "We'll get you warm." She wrapped the boy and the babies in warm blankets, gently rubbing their hands and feet to restore circulation. The babies, twins, she realized now, began to whimper softly, their little faces red from the cold. The older boy never took his eyes off the babies, his small hands still firmly gripping them even beneath the blankets. Mary Claire prepared hot chocolate, adding a bit of warm milk for the babies. As the children drank eagerly, she watched them, a strange feeling forming in her chest. There was something familiar about them, something in the boys' eyes, in the shape of the babies' noses. It was like a fleeting memory, dancing at the edge of her consciousness, refusing to take full shape. "What's your name, dear?" Mary Claire asked gently, offering more hot chocolate. The boy hesitated, his eyes cautious. "Thomas," he finally whispered, "and the babies." Thomas looked at the twins, who were now sleeping peacefully in his arms. "Sophie and Lucas," he said, his voice barely audible. Mary Claire nodded, choosing her next words carefully. "And your parents, Thomas? Where are they?" The effect was immediate. Thomas's entire body stiffened, his eyes widening with fear. He pulled the babies closer, as if expecting Mary Claire to tear them away from him at any moment. "I can't say," he murmured, fresh tears glistening in his eyes. "I promised." That was when Mary Claire noticed the backpack. Small worn, clutched tightly in Thomas's free hand as if his life depended on it. The boy followed her gaze and pulled the backpack closer, partially hiding it under the blanket. Mary Claire felt a knot form in her throat. What had these children been through? What had brought them to her door on a night like this? She wanted to ask more questions, to find out where they came from, why they were alone. But the fear in Thomas's eyes stopped her. Whatever secret he guarded, he was not ready to share it. "It's all right," Mary Claire said softly. "You're safe here. We can talk more in the morning." Thomas relaxed a little, though his eyes remained watchful. Mary Claire arranged a comfortable place for them to sleep near the fireplace, making sure they were warm and safe. When the children finally fell asleep, Mary Claire sat in her armchair, watching them. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the old house, a tense silence hung in the air. Mary Claire knew she should call the authorities. These children clearly needed help. Perhaps they were in danger. But something held her back, that persistent sense of familiarity. The desperation in Thomas's eyes, the secret he guarded so fiercely. She looked at the small backpack, half hidden under Thomas's protective arm. What was inside it? What mystery had these children brought to her door along with the snow and wind? Mary Claire sighed, feeling the weight of a decision that would change lives settling on her shoulders. For now, she would let the children sleep. Tomorrow, perhaps, the answers would come. Outside, the snowfall continued, covering the world in white. Inside, 3 lost children slept, and a lonely woman kept watch, waiting for dawn and the revelations it might bring. Dawn arrived quietly, the previous night's snowstorm giving way to a world of white and stillness. Mary Claire, who had barely slept, watched the first rays of sun dance over the children's sleeping faces. Thomas stirred, his eyes opening slowly. For a moment there was confusion in his gaze, followed by a flash of fear. Then, seeing the twins still safe by his side, he visibly relaxed. "Good morning," Mary Claire said softly. "Did you sleep well?" The boy nodded, cautious. His eyes wandered around the room, stopping at the backpack by his side. With a quick movement, he pulled it closer. Mary Claire pretended not to notice, busying herself with preparing breakfast. As she cooked, she cast furtive glances at the children. The daylight only intensified that strange feeling of familiarity. The shape of Thomas's eyes, the way Sophie wrinkled her nose in her sleep, it all seemed to echo a distant memory she could not quite reach. "You must be hungry," she said, placing a plate of eggs and toast in front of Thomas. "Eat. I'll prepare something for the babies." As she fed the twins with warm porridge, Mary Claire watched Thomas devour his breakfast. His movements were hurried, almost desperate, as if he feared the food might vanish at any moment. "There's more if you want," she offered kindly. Thomas hesitated, then nodded, pushing his empty plate toward her. Mary Claire refilled it, noticing how the boy's eyes never left the backpack for long. "Thomas," she began carefully, "can you tell me where you're from?" The boy froze, his spoon halfway to his mouth. Slowly, he lowered it, his eyes growing distant. "From far away," he finally murmured. "We had to leave." "Why?" Mary Claire pressed gently. Thomas shook his head, tears shining in his eyes. "I can't say, I promised." Mary Claire sighed, feeling torn. Part of her wanted to respect the boy's silence, to give him time and space, but another part knew these children could be in danger, that someone might be looking for them. Her gaze fell on the telephone on the kitchen wall. Should she call the authorities? Report 3 lost children showing up at her door in the midst of a snowstorm? But then Thomas followed her gaze, and the panic in his eyes made Mary Claire hesitate. "Please," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Please don't tell anyone we're here. They'll separate us. I promised I would take care of them." Mary Claire felt her heart tighten. "Who, Thomas? Who will separate you?" But the boy only shook his head, tears rolling silently down his cheeks. Sighing, Mary Claire stood to clear the table. That was when she noticed Thomas's backpack was slightly open. Inside, she could see the corner of a yellowed piece of paper, a letter perhaps, certainly not children's clothes. Before she could look closer, Thomas pulled the backpack toward himself, closing it firmly. His eyes met Mary Claire's, a mix of fear and determination in his gaze. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to snoop." Thomas did not answer, but his grip on the backpack loosened slightly. Mary Claire turned her attention to the twins, changing their diapers and dressing them in clean clothes she had found at the back of an old wardrobe. All the while, her mind was spinning. What was in that backpack that was so important? Why was Thomas so determined to protect it? And why, despite everything, could she not shake the feeling that she knew these children from somewhere? While folding a blanket, a sudden idea struck her. She turned to Thomas, who was absently playing with the laces of his shoes. "Thomas," she said, keeping her voice casual, "what is your family name?" The boy froze, his eyes widening. For a moment, Mary Claire thought he would not answer. Then, in an almost inaudible whisper, he said a name. The blanket slipped from Mary Claire's hands, falling to the floor with a soft thud. It was her daughter's surname, the surname she had not heard in 15 years. Not since Catherine had left her life after a bitter argument. Suddenly, All the pieces began to fit together, the familiarity in the children's faces, Thomas's desperation to keep them together, the secret he guarded so fiercely. Mary Claire felt her legs weaken, sinking into the nearest chair. Her mind spun with possibilities, questions, fears. Could these children? Could Catherine? She looked at Thomas, who watched her with a mixture of fear and hope, at the twins and who cooed happily, unaware of the whirlwind of emotions around them. Mary Claire knew she should ask more questions, demand answers, probably pick up that phone and call someone, anyone, to help unravel this mystery. But as she looked into Thomas's frightened eyes, at the backpack clutched tightly in his small hands, she made her choice. "It's all right," she said softly, reaching out to gently touch Thomas's shoulder. "You can stay here as long as you need. You're safe." The relief flooding the boy's face was palpable. For the first time since he had arrived, a small smile appeared on his lips. Mary Claire returned the smile, though her heart was heavy with unanswered questions. Whatever secret Thomas kept in that backpack, whatever story lay behind these children's arrival, she would wait. She would give them time, space, and above all, safety. Meanwhile, she would watch, listen, and maybe in time the answers would come. Outside, the sun shone on the freshly fallen snow, a new day full of possibilities. Inside the old house, 3 lost children and a woman with a broken heart began to form the bonds of a new family, united by secrets not yet revealed, and a love that the afternoon passed slowly, the winter sun casting elongated shadows across the living room. Mary Claire watched Thomas play quietly with the twins, her mind wandering down long-forgotten paths. 15 years. 15 long years since she had last seen her daughter. The memories, usually kept at bay by sheer willpower, now flooded her consciousness like a torrent. Catherine, young and rebellious, her eyes sparkling with anger. Harsh words exchanged, doors slammed. And then, silence. A silence that had lasted a decade and a half. Mary Claire shook her head, trying to push away the painful images. Her eyes settled again on Thomas, noticing for the 1000th time the curve of his chin, so similar to Catherine's when she was a child. "Thomas," she called softly, "would you like to hear a story?" The boy looked up, curiosity mixed with caution in his gaze. He nodded slowly. Mary Claire settled into her armchair, pulling an old photo album onto her lap. She opened it, revealing images of a young woman with dark hair and a radiant smile. "This was my daughter, Catherine," she began, her voice trembling. She loved telling stories when she was little. Thomas approached, his eyes fixed on the photographs. For a moment, Mary Claire thought she saw a flicker of recognition on his face, but it disappeared so quickly she could not be sure. She looks a bit like you," the boy murmured, almost to himself. Mary Claire felt her heart race. "Yes," she agreed softly. "Yes, she does." She turned the page, revealing more photos of Catherine growing up. Thomas studied them intensely, as if memorizing every detail. "What happened to her?" he asked finally, his voice barely a whisper. Mary Claire closed her eyes for a moment, painful memories dancing in her mind. The last fight, the accusations, the sound of the front door slamming for the last time. We had a falling out," she said finally. "A long time ago. She left and I haven't seen her since." Thomas looked at her with surprising intensity for one so young. "Do you miss her?" The question, so simple and yet so deep, took Mary Claire by surprise. Tears she did not know she was holding began to slide down her cheeks. "Every day," she whispered. Thomas moved hesitantly, as if he wanted to comfort her, but then he stopped, his eyes drifting to the backpack in the corner of the room. Mary Claire followed his gaze. The curiosity she had been suppressing since the children's arrival returned with full force. "Thomas," she said gently, "what's in that backpack that's so important to you?" The boy visibly recoiled, wrapping his arms protectively around the sleeping twins. It's just some things," he murmured. "Important things." Mary Claire nodded, not wanting to push too hard. "That's all right. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." They fell silent for a moment. the old clock ticking softly on the wall. Then, to Mary Claire's surprise, Thomas began to speak. "Mom used to tell stories," he said quietly, "about a princess who ran away from the castle because the king and queen didn't understand her." Mary Claire felt her heart tighten. Was that how Catherine had seen what happened? "The princess met a prince," Thomas continued, his voice gaining confidence. "They fell in love and had 3 little children. But then—" He stopped abruptly, biting his lip as if he had said too much. "Then what, dear?" Mary Claire encouraged gently. Thomas shook his head. "I can't say. It's a secret." Mary Claire nodded, respecting the boy's reluctance, but her mind spun with the implications of the child's story. Catherine, a runaway princess, a prince, 3 children. She looked at the twins, then at Thomas. Could it be? A sudden movement caught her attention. Thomas had stood up and was walking toward the backpack. Carefully, he opened it, taking something out. It was a worn storybook, its pages yellowed with age. Thomas brought it to Mary Claire, offering it hesitantly. "Mom read to us every night," he said softly. Mary Claire took the book with trembling hands. As she opened it, a piece of yellowed paper fell into her lap. She picked it up, her heart nearly stopping as she recognized the handwriting. It was a letter addressed to her in Catherine's unmistakable script. Before she could read more, Thomas snatched the paper from her hands, stuffing it back into the backpack. "Sorry," he murmured. "You're not supposed to see that yet." Mary Claire nodded, too stunned to speak. Her mind whirled with questions. What did the letter say? Why had Catherine written it? And why did Thomas carry it with him? The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Mary Claire cared for the children mechanically, her mind full of possibilities and theories. Every movement Thomas made, every furtive glance at the backpack, fueled her growing curiosity. At night, after the children were asleep, Mary Claire sat in her armchair, the old photo album in her lap. She leafed through it slowly, tracing Catherine's face with trembling fingers. So many unanswered questions, so many lost years. And now, these mysterious children, carrying echoes of a past she hardly understood. Mary Claire looked at Thomas's backpack, its contents still a tantalizing mystery. Part of her wanted to rummage through it, to discover all the secrets it held, but she knew she couldn't betray the fragile trust Thomas was beginning to place in her. With a sigh, she closed the album. Tomorrow, she promised herself, tomorrow she would try again. Ask more questions, hear more stories, and perhaps, just perhaps, start to unravel the mystery that had landed on her doorstep during a snowstorm. Meanwhile, she would watch over the children, protecting them from any shadows that might be chasing them, and wait with a heart full of hope and fear for whatever the dawn might bring. Dawn brought a light mist, draping the house in an ethereal veil. Mary Claire found Thomas already awake, sitting by the window, his eyes lost in the white landscape outside. "Good morning, dear," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. Thomas turned, a small smile playing on his lips. "Good morning," he replied, his voice still husky with sleep. Mary Claire joined him at the window, watching the first rays of sun struggle to penetrate the fog. "Did you sleep well?" The boy nodded. Then his gaze shifted to the twins, still sleeping on the makeshift sofa bed. "They slept all night," he said, a note of pride in his voice. "Normally, Lucas wakes up crying." Mary Claire felt a pang in her heart. The way Thomas spoke, how he cared for his siblings, it was far beyond his 5 years. "Thomas," she began hesitantly, "can you tell me more about your mother?" The boy tensed for a moment, then relaxed, as if he had made a decision. "Mom is sick," he said quietly. She had to go to a big hospital." Mary Claire nodded encouragingly. "Is that why you came here?" Thomas bit his lip, clearly debating how much to reveal. "Mom said we had to find Grandma," he finally whispered. "She said it was important, that Grandma would keep us safe." Mary Claire's heart sped up. Grandma. Could it be? Before she could ask more, Sophie started to whimper. Thomas immediately stood, going to his sister's side with an efficiency that broke Mary Claire's heart. "Shh, it's all right," he murmured, picking the baby up in his arms with care. "I'm here." Mary Claire watched, fascinated, as Thomas soothed Sophie with the skill of a seasoned caregiver. Unbidden memories flooded her mind. Thomas, barely able to reach the kitchen counter, preparing a bottle with determination. Thomas, sitting on the floor of a dark room, softly singing to calm the crying twins. Thomas is with dark circles under his eyes, changing diapers and wiping runny noses. Mary Claire blinked, pushing away the images. Where had they come from? They weren't her memories, yet they felt so vivid, so real. "You're very good at this," she commented, approaching to help. Thomas shrugged, but a flicker of pride crossed his face. "I promised Mom I would take care of them," he said simply. The promise? Mary Claire felt they were getting closer to something important. "What promise was that, Thomas?" she asked gently. The boy hesitated, his eyes flicking briefly to the backpack in the corner. "I promised I would find Grandma and keep Sophie and Lucas safe," he finally said. "Mom said it was very important that we had to stay together, no matter what." Mary Claire felt tears welling in her eyes. The responsibility this small boy carried was crushing. "You've done a wonderful job, Thomas," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You kept them safe. You brought them here." Thomas looked at her, a mixture of hope and fear in his eyes. Are you Grandma?" he asked hesitantly. Mary Claire's world seemed to stop for a moment. She wanted to say yes, to hold this brave boy and tell him everything would be all right. But she couldn't be sure. Not yet. "I don't know, dear," she answered honestly. "But I'm here to help you no matter what." Thomas nodded slowly, as if processing the information. Then, to Mary Claire's surprise, he began to tell a story. "Mum always said there was a queen in a distant castle," he began, his voice gaining confidence. "The queen was very wise and kind, but sometimes didn't understand the princess, so the princess left to find her own path." Mary Claire listened, fascinated, recognizing echoes of her own story with Catherine. "The princess met a prince, and they were very happy," Thomas continued. "But then the prince had to go away forever, and the princess was sad and sick. She knew she had to send her children back to the castle for the queen to take care of them." The story ended abruptly, Thomas seeming to realize he might have said too much. He turned his attention back to Sophie, adjusting her in his arms. Mary Claire felt her heart break. The childish tale barely disguised the real tragedy behind it. Catherine, alone and ill. An absent father, dead maybe. And 3 small children, sent on a dangerous journey to find a grandmother they weren't even sure would accept them. Gently, she placed her hand on Thomas's shoulder. "That's a very beautiful and sad story," she said softly. "Thank you for sharing it with me." Thomas looked at her, his eyes full of an understanding beyond his years. "So how do you think the queen will take care of the princess's children?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mary Claire felt tears slide down her cheeks. "Yes," she answered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I'm sure she will." In that moment, something changed between them. A fragile trust began to bloom. Thomas allowed Mary Claire to help more with the twins, and he even shared some stories about Mom. Small fragments of a life Mary Claire could barely imagine. As the day wore on, Mary Claire felt the bond between her and the children growing stronger. Thomas laughed more easily. The twins responded to her touch with toothless smiles. It was as if a puzzle was slowly coming together piece by piece, but there were still so many questions unanswered. The mysterious contents of the backpack, the exact whereabouts of Catherine, the identity of the prince from the story. That night, after the children were asleep, Mary Claire allowed herself, for the first time, to truly believe these might be her grandchildren. The joy and fear that realization brought were almost overwhelming. Looking at the 3 sleeping children, Mary Claire made a silent promise. No matter what happened, she would protect them. She would find the truth. And somehow she would find a way to bring her family back together. With that thought, she fell asleep in her armchair, watching over the little ones who, in just a few days, had become the center of her world. Morning arrived with deceptive softness, the winter sun shining through misty windows. Mary Claire was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, while Thomas played quietly with the twins in the living room. The sound of something falling broke the comfortable silence. Mary Claire turned, seeing Thomas frozen in place, his eyes wide, fixed on a piece of paper on the floor. "It's all right, dear," she said softly, approaching. "Let me help you." Before Thomas could react, Mary Claire bent down to pick up the paper. It was a letter, the paper yellowed and worn at the folds, as if it had been read over and over. Her eyes caught a name at the top of the page, making her heart skip a beat. "Dear Mother," the letter began, in Catherine's unmistakable handwriting. Thomas snatched the paper from her hands, pressing it against his chest. "Sorry," he murmured, tears glistening in his eyes. "You weren't supposed to see that." Mary Claire took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "It's all right, Thomas," she said gently. "You don't have to apologize." The boy looked at her warily, as if assessing whether he could trust her. Finally, he spoke, his voice almost a whisper. "Mom wrote many letters. She said I should give them to Grandma when we found her." Mary Claire nodded encouragingly. "And you carried them all in your backpack?" Thomas nodded. "Mom said they were important, that they would explain everything." Mary Claire's heart ached for the weight this little boy carried. She wanted to hug him, tell him everything would be all right, but she knew she had to go slowly. "Thomas," she began carefully, "can you tell me where your mother is now?" The boy bit his lip, clearly debating with himself. Then, as if he had made a decision, he spoke. "She's at St. Mary's Hospital. It's a big white place with lots of windows." Mary Claire felt a wave of recognition. St. Mary's was the main hospital in the region, about 2 hours away. Her mind began to spin with possibilities. "Thank you for telling me, Thomas," she said softly. "Though that's very helpful." The rest of the morning passed in a whirl of household activities, but Mary Claire's mind was elsewhere. While the children napped after lunch, she sat at the kitchen table with a notepad, trying to connect the dots. Catherine was at St. Mary's Hospital, ill apparently. She had sent her children to find Grandma, and there were letters that could explain everything, but why? What had happened in the last 15 years to lead to this desperate situation? Mary Claire knew she needed to be careful. She couldn't just pick up the phone and call the hospital. What if Catherine was hiding from someone? And she couldn't force Thomas to reveal more than he was ready to share. Deciding she needed fresh air to clear her mind, Mary Claire stepped outside for a short walk. That was when she noticed the curious looks from her neighbors. Mrs. Dawson, who lived next door, waved hesitantly. "Good morning, Mary Claire." "Dice, I couldn't help noticing you've had visitors these past few days." Mary Claire felt a stab of anxiety. She had hoped for more time before the community started asking questions. "Yes," she replied, trying to keep her voice casual. "Some relatives came to stay with me for a while." Mrs. Dawson nodded, but her eyes were filled with unsatisfied curiosity. "How lovely. I didn't know you had family in the area." "It's a long story," Mary Claire said with a tense smile. "Maybe I can tell you another time." As she walked back home, Mary Claire could feel eyes following her. She knew rumors would start soon, if they hadn't already. A lonely widow suddenly with 3 small children. It was the kind of gossip that would fuel conversations in the small village for weeks. Back in the safety of her home, Mary Claire found Thomas awake, watching her with wide, worried eyes. "Is everything all right?" he asked, his voice small and worried. Mary Claire smiled reassuringly. "Yes, dear. I just went for a little walk." Thomas nodded, then, to her surprise, handed her a folded piece of paper. I think you should read this," he said hesitantly. With trembling hands, Mary Claire took the paper. It was the letter Thomas had dropped earlier. "Dear Mother," she read aloud, her voice thick with emotion. "I know it's been a long time. I know there's so much to explain, so much to ask forgiveness for, but time is running out, and my children need you. Please take care of them. Protect them. Love them as I know you always loved me, even when we couldn't understand each other. Thomas knows the way. He carries all the explanations you need. Trust him, trust me, one last time. With all my love and regret, Catherine." Mary Claire looked at Thomas, tears streaming freely down her face. The boy watched her with a mixture of fear and hope. "Are you really Grandma?" he asked in a whisper. Mary Claire nodded, unable to speak. She opened her arms, and after a moment of hesitation, Thomas ran into them. burying his face in her shoulder. As she embraced the grandson she barely knew, Mary Claire understood her life had changed forever. There were still many unanswered questions, many mysteries to unravel. But one thing was certain. She would do everything in her power to protect these children and find a way back to her lost daughter. Outside, the small community buzzed with speculation. Inside Mary Claire's home, a fragmented family was slowly piecing itself back together. Dusk painted the sky in shades of lavender and pink as Mary Claire climbed up to the attic. Dust danced in the dim light as she rummaged through old boxes, searching for answers in fragments of the past. Her fingers brushed against a faded shoebox hidden beneath piles of photo albums. With a racing heart, she opened it. Inside, yellowed letters and newspaper clippings told the silent story of 15 years of separation. At the bottom of the box, a sealed envelope caught her eye. Her own handwriting looked back at her. For Catherine. With trembling hands, Mary Claire opened the envelope, unfolding a letter she had never had the courage to send. "My dear Catherine," she began reading softly, the words echoing in the attic's silence. "It's been 3 months since you left. 3 months of deafening silence, regret, and sleepless nights. I know our last words were angry, but please know my love for you never wavered. I understand now that I was too harsh, too inflexible. Your desire to find your own path, to live your life on your own terms, wasn't rebellion, it was courage. A courage I, in my fear, mistook for recklessness. That young man, John, isn't it? Maybe I was wrong about him too. My fear of losing you blinded me to the possibility that he could be good for you, that you could build something beautiful together. Please, come home. Or at least let me know you're all right. The door is always open for you, my daughter, always. With all my love, Mom." Mary Claire let the letter fall into her lap, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. So many years lost, so many words unspoken. A creak on the stairs made her turn around. Thomas stood there, his big eyes fixed on the letter in her lap. "Is that from Mom?" he asked hesitantly. Mary Claire shook her head. "No, dear, it's a letter I wrote to her a long time ago. A letter I never sent." Thomas approached slowly, as if pulled by an invisible force. His eyes scanned the words on the page, his brow furrowed in concentration. "John," he murmured, almost to himself. "That's my dad's name." Mary Claire felt her heart leap. "Your father?" she asked softly. Thomas nodded, then, as if realizing he had said too much, took a step back. "I shouldn't have said that," he said, fear evident in his voice. "Mom said it was a secret." Mary Claire reached out gently, not wanting to frighten him. "It's all right, Thomas. You didn't do anything wrong. Can you tell me more about your father?" The boy bit his lip, clearly conflicted. For a moment, it seemed as if he would open up, but then he shook his head vigorously. "I can't. I promised." Mary Claire nodded, respecting the boy's loyalty. "That's all right, dear. Thank you for telling me what you could." As they descended from the attic, Mary Claire's mind whirled. John, the man who had caused so much discord between her and Catherine, Thomas's father. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place, but so many gaps remained. Determined to learn more, Mary Claire waited until the children were asleep. Then she sat at the kitchen table with a notepad, listing everything she knew and the questions that still needed answers. Catherine was at St. Mary's Hospital, sick, possibly gravely. John was the children's father, but for some reason, he wasn't around. The children had been sent to find her, carrying explanatory letters. But why? What had happened over the last 15 years to lead here? Absorbed in her thoughts, Mary Claire almost jumped when she heard a knock at the door. Glancing at the clock, she frowned. Who could it be at this hour? Opening the door, she found Mrs. Dawson's worried face outside. "I'm sorry to bother you so late, Mary Claire," Mrs. Dawson said, her tone a mix of concern and poorly disguised curiosity. "But I couldn't help notice the children and the rumors in the village." Mary Claire felt a wave of panic. She wasn't ready to explain, not when there was so much she herself still didn't understand. "They're my grandchildren," she said quickly, hoping the half-truth would calm her neighbor's curiosity. "They're staying with me while my daughter sorts some things out." Mrs. Dawson raised an eyebrow. Grandchildren. But Mary Claire, no one knew you had a daughter, let alone grandchildren. Mary Claire forced a smile. It's a long story, Mrs. Dawson. Perhaps we can talk about it another time. But Mrs. Dawson did not seem ready to give up easily. People are talking, you know. 3 children appearing out of nowhere. Some say we should call the authorities just to make sure everything's all right. Fear tightened around Mary Claire's chest. There's no need, she said, her voice firmer than she felt. I assure you, the children are safe and well cared for here. Mrs. Dawson studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. If you say so. But you know we're here if you need help, right? Mary Claire thanked her and closed the door, leaning against it with a heavy sigh. Her neighbor's visit was a painful reminder that her little refuge couldn't remain isolated from the outside world forever. Returning to the kitchen, she found Thomas standing in the doorway, his eyes wide with fear. Are they going to take us away? He asked, his voice trembling. Mary Claire knelt down, pulling him into a tight hug. No, dear, I won't let that happen. You're safe here, I promise. As she held the trembling boy, Mary Claire knew her window of time was closing. She needed to find out the truth, and fast, for the children's safety, for Catherine's sake, and to finally heal the wounds of the past. Tomorrow, she decided, tomorrow she would start her own investigation. No matter what it cost, she would discover what had happened to her daughter over the last 15 years and find a way to keep her family together and safe. With that firm resolve in her heart, Mary Claire led Thomas back to bed, preparing herself for another night of vigil, guarding the dreams of the children who, in so short a time, had become the center of her world. Morning arrived with quiet deception. Mary Claire prepared breakfast, occasionally glancing at Thomas Ree, who played silently with the twins on the rug. Mrs. Dawson's visit the night before still weighed on her mind, reminding her of the urgency of her situation. Then Thomas stood up abruptly, his eyes fixed on Mary Claire with surprising intensity for someone so young. "Grandma," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I think it's time." Mary Claire felt her heart speed up. "Time for what, dear?" In response, Thomas went to his backpack, pulling it close with care. With slow, deliberate movements, he opened it, revealing its mysterious contents for the first time. "Mom said I should show you this when I was sure," he explained, his voice low. "I think I'm sure now." Mary Claire knelt beside him, hardly daring to breathe, as Thomas took out a stack of letters. There were dozens of them, all addressed to Mother, in Catherine's unmistakable handwriting. With trembling hands, Mary Claire took the first letter. The date at the top made her gasp. It was from just 1 month after Catherine left. "Dear Mother," she began to read aloud, her voice thick with emotion. "It's been a month since I left. A month of freedom, discoveries, love, and longing. John and I got married yesterday. It was a simple ceremony, just the 2 of us and a few witnesses. I wish so much you could have been there. I wish I could share this joy with you. I know you didn't approve of John, thought he wasn't good enough for me. But Mother, he's wonderful, kind, dedicated, full of dreams. We're building a life together, step by step. Maybe one day you can meet him for real. Maybe one day we can be a family again. With love, Catherine." Mary Claire let the letter fall into her lap, silent tears trailing down her cheeks. Thomas watched her closely, his eyes full of understanding beyond his years. "There's more," he said softly, handing her another letter. This one was dated 3 years later. Catherine's handwriting looked more hurried, the words smudged in some places. "Mother, things are hard. John lost his job and we're struggling to pay the bills. Sometimes I wonder if we made a mistake, if we should have listened to you. But then I look at our little Thomas, sleeping peacefully in his crib, and I know I would do it all again. He has your eyes, you know, and your smile. I wish so much that you could meet him. I wish I could ask for your advice, your comfort, but pride still stops me. How can I return after everything I said, everything I did? I hope one day we can make amends. Until then, know that I think of you every day. Catherine." Mary Claire looked at Thomas, seeing him now with new eyes. Her grandson. The baby mentioned in the letter now sat before her, guardian of secrets he barely understood. The letters went on, each one revealing a bit more of Catherine's life. Moments of joy, the twins' birth, birthdays, small victories, and moments of pain, financial hardships, fights, a growing sense of isolation. The last letter made Mary Claire freeze. It was dated only 2 weeks ago, the ink still fresh on the page. "Mother, I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to send these letters. I don't know if you'll ever read them, but I need to write, need to believe that somehow these words will reach you. I'm sick, Mother, very sick. The doctors aren't optimistic. John is gone. A car accident 6 months ago. It's been just me and the children since then. I've made so many mistakes. I was stubborn, proud. I wasted years we could have spent together. And now, when I need you most, I don't even know if you still live in the same place, if you still care. I'm sending the children to you. It's my last hope. Please take care of them. Love them as I know you always loved me, even when I couldn't see it. Thomas knows the way. He's so strong, so brave. Take care of him especially. He has carried so much weight on his small shoulders. I beg your forgiveness, Mother, for everything. And I hope with all my heart that it's not too late for us. With all my love, Catherine." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken emotions. Mary Claire looked at Thomas, tears streaming down her face. The boy watched her, silent tears glistening on his cheeks. "Oh, my dear," she whispered, pulling him into a tight embrace. Thomas clung to her, sobs shaking his small body. At that moment, the phone rang, cutting through the air like a knife. Mary Claire rose reluctantly, her heart still heavy with revelations. "Hello," she answered, her voice hoarse. "Is this Mary Claire Davis?" An unfamiliar voice asked on the other end. "Yes, this is she. I'm calling from St. Mary's Hospital. We've been trying to reach the family of Catherine Davis. She gave us this number as an emergency contact." Mary Claire felt her world spin. "Yes, I'm her mother. Is she all right?" There was a pause on the other line. "Mrs. Davis, I'm sorry to inform you that your daughter's condition has worsened significantly. The doctors believe it would be best if the family could come as soon as possible." The phone almost slipped from Mary Claire's trembling hands. She looked at Thomas, who watched her with wide, fearful eyes. We'll be there as soon as we can," she managed to say before hanging up. The world seemed to move in slow motion. Mary Claire knelt in front of Thomas, holding his small hands in hers. "Thomas," she said softly, "we need to go see your mother. Now." The boy nodded, a mixture of fear and determination in his eyes. "I knew this day would come," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. "Mom said we'd have to be brave." Mary Claire felt her heart break once again at the forced maturity of this small boy. She pulled him into another hug, silently vowing to do everything in her power to protect these children and mend the past. As she hurried to pack for the trip, Mary Claire's mind raced with the revelations from the letters and the fear of what they might find at the hospital. 15 years of separation, misunderstandings, and missed opportunities, all culminating in this moment. Looking at the 3 children, Thomas efficiently helping get the twins ready, Mary Claire knew that whatever happened, her life would never be the same. The past and present had collided, and the future was a frightening unknown. But one thing was certain: they would face whatever came together as the family they always should have been. Mary Claire's car wound along the narrow road, leaving behind the small village she had called home for so many years. In the back seat, Thomas sat between the twin seats, his eyes darting between the sleeping babies and the changing landscape outside. The silence inside the vehicle was heavy, filled with anxiety and expectation. Mary Claire cast frequent glances in the rearview mirror, still scarcely believing how drastically her life had changed in just a few days. "Thomas," she said softly, breaking the silence, "can you tell me how you got to my house? It must have been quite a journey for such a little boy." Thomas was quiet for a moment, his eyes growing distant as if reliving recent memories. "My mom gave me a map," he began, his voice low but firm. "She marked the route from our home to yours. We practiced many times before she went to the hospital." Mary Claire felt a lump in her throat. The image of Catherine, sick and desperate, teaching her 5-year-old to navigate an unfamiliar city, was almost unbearable. We left at night, Thomas continued. Mom said it was safer that way. I carried Sophie, and Lucas was in the backpack on my back. A sudden flash filled Mary Claire's mind. Thomas, his small face determined, walking through dark city streets. Sophie nestled in his arms, while the backpack with Lucas moved gently with his steps. The boy stopped occasionally to check the map under a lamppost's light, his lips moving silently as he memorized the next step. "You traveled only at night?" Mary Claire asked, both impressed and horrified. Thomas nodded. "During the day, we found places to rest. Parks, libraries, sometimes churches. I fed the twins bottles and changed their diapers. Mom taught me how to do everything." Another image invaded Mary Claire's mind. Thomas sitting on a park bench, carefully feeding Sophie a bottle. His eyes constantly scanned the area, alert to any danger. Lucas lay on a makeshift blanket, babbling softly. "You must have been so scared," Mary Claire said softly, her heart aching for what this little boy had endured. Thomas remained silent for a moment. "Sometimes," he finally admitted, "but I had to be strong, for Sophie and Lucas, and for Mom." Mary Claire felt tears welling in her eyes. The courage and maturity of this 5-year-old boy were simply extraordinary. Were there difficult moments?" she asked hesitantly, not sure if she really wanted to know the answer. Thomas nodded slowly. "One night, it was raining really hard. We couldn't find shelter. Sophie got a fever." Another vivid memory took shape. Thomas, soaked to the bone, holding Sophie against his chest. The baby cried softly, her face red with fever. The boy looked around frantically, searching desperately for a safe, dry place. "So what did you do?" Mary Claire whispered. "I found a church," Thomas replied. "The priest let us stay in the sacristy. He gave us food and dry clothes. He helped bring Sophie's fever down." Mary Claire let out a sigh she didn't know she was holding. The idea that someone had shown kindness to these vulnerable children during their dangerous journey touched her deeply. "You were incredibly brave, Thomas," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your mother would be so proud of you." Thomas looked at her, a small smile on his lips. "You think so?" "I'm sure of it," Mary Claire replied firmly. The rest of the journey passed in more comfortable silence, occasionally punctuated by Mary Claire's gentle questions and Thomas's thoughtful answers. Each new revelation made her heart ache with admiration for this extraordinary boy and pain for what he had been forced to endure. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the outlines of St. Mary's Hospital appeared on the horizon. It was an imposing building, its white walls gleaming in the afternoon sun. Mary Claire felt her heart race. After 15 years of separation, she was about to see her daughter again. The swirl of emotions, fear, hope, regret, love, was almost overwhelming. She parked the car and turned to look at Thomas. The boy was pale, his eyes fixed on the hospital with a mix of anticipation and dread. "Are you ready, dear?" she asked softly. Thomas swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Mom is waiting for us." Together, they got out of the car. Mary Claire carried Lucas, while Thomas, true to his protective role, carried Sophie. Side by side, grandmother and grandson walked toward the hospital entrance, each step bringing them closer to the truth that awaited inside. As they approached the glass doors, Mary Claire felt Thomas squeeze her free hand. She looked down, meeting his eyes, filled with fear and determination. "We'll be all right, won't we, Grandma?" he asked, his voice small but hopeful. Mary Claire gently squeezed his hand. "Yes, my dear," she replied, putting more confidence in her voice than she felt. "We'll be fine. We're together now." With one last look of mutual encouragement, they stepped through the hospital doors, ready to face whatever fate had in store. The smell of antiseptic and the soft hum of machines enveloped them, marking the start of a new chapter in their journey. Mary Claire knew that, regardless of what they found beyond those doors, their lives would never be the same. But with Thomas by her side, brave and resilient, she felt ready to face any challenge. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They would face it as a family, united by the love and courage they had found in each other, along this extraordinary journey. The hospital corridor seemed endless, each step echoing in the oppressive silence. Mary Claire held Thomas's hand firmly, the twins cradled against her chest in a double stroller. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Finally, they reached room 315. Mary Claire hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob. 15 years of separation, of unspoken words, of regrets, all culminating in this moment. "Grandma?" Thomas's soft voice brought her back to reality. "Are you all right?" She looked at the boy, seeing both fear and courage in his eyes. With a nod, she turned the knob. The room was bathed in the gentle light of late afternoon, and there, in the bed, was Catherine, pale, thinner than Mary Claire remembered, but unmistakably her daughter. Catherine's eyes opened slowly, focusing first on Mary Claire, then on Thomas and the twins. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. "Mother!" Catherine's voice was weak, almost a whisper. Mary Claire felt the tears she had been holding back finally break free. "Oh, Catherine," she sobbed, rushing to her daughter's side. The two women embraced, years of hurt and regret dissolving into tears and muffled sobs. "You came," Catherine murmured between tears. "You really came." "Of course I came," Mary Claire replied, stroking her daughter's hair. "I would always come for you, my love." They pulled apart, looking at each other as if trying to memorize every detail. That was when Catherine noticed Thomas, standing hesitantly in the doorway. "My brave boy," she said, opening her arms. Thomas ran to her, burying his face in her neck. Mary Claire watched the reunion, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. There was so much to say, so many questions to be answered. "Catherine," she began softly, "what happened? Why did you never get in touch?" Catherine sighed, guilt evident in her eyes. "At first it was pride. I was so determined to prove I could handle things on my own that you were wrong about John." Mary Claire felt a pang of regret. "I'm sorry I was so hard on you about him." Catherine shook her head. "No, Mum, you had every right to worry. John was complicated. We loved each other, but it wasn't always easy." She paused, looking at Thomas now playing quietly with the twins in the corner of the room. "When Thomas was born, things got better for a while. John got a good job. We were happy. But then—" She hesitated, fresh tears glistening in her eyes. "What happened, dear?" Mary Claire asked gently. "John started drinking. He lost his job. Things became difficult. I wanted to come home so many times, but shame stopped me. How could I admit you were right all along?" Mary Claire's heart tightened. "Oh, Catherine, I would never have judged you. I just wanted you safe and happy." Catherine nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "I know that now. But then, well, I was young and stubborn." She continued her story, describing the twins' birth, the financial struggles, the brief moments of happiness amid hardship. "And then, 6 months ago," Catherine paused, her voice trembling. "John died in a car accident. He had been drinking." Mary Claire gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "Oh, my love. I'm so sorry." Catherine nodded, taking a deep breath before continuing. "It was right after that I found out I was sick. Cancer, advanced stage. The doctors, they're not optimistic." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unsaid emotions and lost years. "Why did you send the children to me?" Mary Claire asked finally. Catherine looked at her children, love and pain mixed in her gaze. "Because I knew you'd love and protect them no matter what. Because I wanted them to have a chance to know their wonderful grandmother, and because—" her voice broke, "because I wanted to make amends with you before it was too late." Mary Claire felt tears flood her eyes again. She took Catherine's hands in hers, squeezing gently. "It's never too late, my dear. We're here now, together, and we'll face this together, as a family." At that moment, a small movement at the door caught Mary Claire's attention. Thomas stood there, his eyes wide and full of understanding. He had heard everything. "Thomas," Catherine called softly. "Come here, my love." The boy approached slowly, looking from Catherine to Mary Claire. "You were so brave, my son," Catherine said, pulling him into a hug. "So strong. Mommy is so proud of you." Thomas nodded, silent tears sliding down his cheeks. I did what you asked, Mom. I brought us safely to Grandma. Mary Claire felt her heart fill with love and admiration for this small boy who had carried so much weight on his shoulders. Yes, you did, she said, joining the embrace. And now we're all together. As 3 generations embraced, the twins gurgling happily in their stroller, Mary Claire felt a wave of determination wash over her. No matter what the future held, they would face it together. The past was forgiven, the present was precious, and the future, though uncertain, would be met with love and unity. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the hospital room, as if sealing this silent promise of a new chance, a new beginning for this reunited family. The days that followed in the hospital were a mix of intense emotions and long overdue conversations. Mary Claire practically moved into Catherine's room, determined not to lose another minute with her daughter. On a quiet afternoon, while Thomas played silently with the twins in the corner of the room, Catherine and Mary Claire finally addressed the old wounds that had kept them apart for so long. Mom, Catherine began, her voice weak but determined. I'm sorry. For everything. For leaving like I did. For not contacting you. Mary Claire squeezed her daughter's hand gently. I'm sorry too, dear. I was so inflexible, so blind to your needs. I should have supported you, not judged you. Silent tears streamed down both their faces as they finally voiced years of regrets and unspoken words. I wanted to come back so many times, Catherine confessed, especially after Thomas was born. But pride, and then shame, kept me away. Mary Claire nodded, understanding. What matters is that we're here now, together. It was then that Catherine's doctor entered, his face grave. The 2 women straightened up, anticipating the news. Ms. Davis, the doctor began, the results of your latest tests are in. Unfortunately, the cancer has spread more than we hoped. Treatment options are limited at this stage. Catherine closed her eyes, breathing deeply. Mary Claire felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. How long? Catherine asked, her voice barely a whisper. The doctor hesitated. It's hard to say for certain, but weeks, maybe a few months with aggressive treatment. The silence that followed was deafening. Mary Claire looked at Thomas, who had stopped playing and was watching the scene with wide, attentive eyes. After the doctor left, the reality of the situation weighed heavily on them. Catherine was the first to break the silence. Thomas, dear, come here, she called softly. The boy approached the bed, his eyes flicking between his mother and grandmother. Did you hear what the doctor said? Catherine asked gently. Thomas nodded, his eyes shining with unshed tears. You're going away like Daddy, aren't you? Mary Claire's heart broke at the understanding in the child's voice. Catherine pulled Thomas into a tight hug. Oh, my love, I don't want to go. But sometimes we can't choose these things. To both women's surprise, Thomas pulled back, his face serious. I understand, Mom. It's like in the stories you told me. Sometimes heroes have to take long journeys and leave the people they love behind. Mary Claire felt tears slip down her cheeks at the maturity and comprehension in her grandson's words. That's right, my brave boy, Catherine said, her voice trembling. But even when heroes leave, and they leave their love behind, don't they? Thomas nodded solemnly. And they always live on in the hearts of the people who love them. All 3 generations embraced, sharing tears and mutual comfort. Later, when Thomas finally fell asleep, exhausted by the day's emotions, Catherine and Mary Claire faced difficult decisions. Mom, Catherine began hesitantly. I know it's a lot to ask, but... Don't even finish that sentence, Mary Claire interrupted gently. Of course I'll take care of the children. They are my family, Catherine. Our blood. Catherine let out a sigh of relief. Thank you. I was so worried. Thomas has already carried so much responsibility, and the twins are so small. Mary Claire held her daughter's hands. We'll figure it out. Together, for as long as we have. And afterward as well, I promise they'll always know how much you loved them. The 2 women spent the next hours discussing future plans, palliative care, legal arrangements, memories Catherine wanted to leave for her children. There's something I'd like to do, Catherine said, her voice taking on a note of urgency. "I want to take the children home. Our home. Even if it's just for a few days, I want them to have those memories." Mary Claire hesitated, worried about Catherine's health. But seeing the determination in her daughter's eyes, she understood. It was one last gift Catherine wanted to give her children. "All right," she agreed. "Yeah, we'll talk to the doctors and see what we can arrange." That night, after Catherine finally fell asleep, Mary Claire found herself alone with her thoughts. The magnitude of what lay ahead hit her with full force. In a matter of weeks, she had gone from a lonely widow to the guardian of 3 small children. Looking at Thomas, Sophie, and Lucas, all sleeping peacefully, Mary Claire felt a wave of love and protection wash over her. They were her second chance, an opportunity to right past wrongs, to be the support she couldn't be for Catherine. With that firm resolve in her heart, Mary Claire made a silent promise. She would care for these children with every fibre of her being. Honor Catherine's memory in every action, every loving word, every shared moment. The future was uncertain and frightening, but Mary Claire knew she wasn't alone. She had Catherine's love, Thomas's surprising strength, and the pure innocence of Sophie and Lucas to guide her. As the sun rose, bringing a new day and new challenges, Mary Claire felt truly at peace for the first time in a long while. No matter what came, they would face it together, as the family they always should have been. The old wooden stairs creaked as Mary Claire climbed them, carrying a box full of old toys. The guest room, silent and empty for so long, now buzzed with the energy of 3 small children. "Grandma, look!" Thomas exclaimed, holding up an old teddy bear he had found at the bottom of a trunk. "He looks like Mr. Snuggles that Mom gave me." Mary Claire smiled, placing the box on the floor. "Actually, dear, that's the original Mr. Snuggles. He was your Mum's favorite bear when she was your age." Thomas's eyes widened, hugging the bear even tighter. Mary Claire felt a pang in her heart, remembering Catherine as a little girl, running around the house with that very bear. In the weeks that followed, Mary Claire's house was transformed. The guest room was now a colourful children's room, with 3 small beds lined up against the wall. Safety gates were installed at the stairs, drawers locked, and fragile objects carefully stored away. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Catherine fought bravely. The intensive treatment left her exhausted, but she refused to give up. Each day was a battle, but also a precious opportunity to spend more time with her reunited family. Mary Claire divided her time between caring for the children at home and being by Catherine's side at the hospital. It was exhausting, but she drew strength from the love that united them. Thomas, in particular, struggled to adjust to the new reality. One moment he acted like the little boss man of the house, helping with the twins and showing remarkable maturity for his age. The next, he clung to Mary Claire, crying for his mother and begging to go back home. One particularly difficult afternoon, Mary Claire found Thomas hiding in the closet, sobbing quietly. "Oh, my dear," she said softly, sitting beside him. "What's wrong?" I want Mom," he sobbed. "Why does she have to be sick? It's not fair." Mary Claire pulled him into a tight hug, feeling his small body tremble with sobs. "No, it's not fair," she agreed. "Sometimes sad things happen, and we don't understand why. But what we can do is love each other even more." Thomas sniffed, looking at her with red-rimmed eyes. "Jar, do you promise you won't leave us too?" Mary Claire's heart broke a little more. "Oh, Thomas, I promise I'll do everything I can to stay with you for a very long time, and even when I can't be here physically, my love for you will never go away." Slowly, Thomas calmed down. When they finally left the closet, he seemed a bit lighter, as if he had left part of his burden behind. While Thomas struggled with his emotions, the twins, Sophie and Lucas, began to show their distinct personalities, bringing moments of joy amid sadness. Sophie was the adventurous one, always trying to climb furniture and explore every corner of the house. Lucas, on the other hand, was the quiet observer, happy to sit and watch the world around him, his big eyes absorbing everything. One morning, Mary Claire found Sophie trying to climb the bookshelf, while Lucas looked on with an expression that seemed almost disapproving for a baby. "Oh no, young lady," Mary Claire laughed, catching Sophie before she got too high. "You're just like your mother. Catherine was always looking for the next adventure." The mention of Catherine brought a sad smile to Mary Claire's lips, but she pushed it away quickly. There was so much to do, so much love to give. News of the family's situation spread quickly through the small community. To Mary Claire's surprise and gratitude, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Mrs. Dawson, who once looked suspiciously at the newcomers, now regularly appeared with home-cooked meals and offers to help. Mr. Martin, the local carpenter, spent an entire weekend helping adapt the house for the children, refusing to accept any payment. One Saturday afternoon, Mary Claire was startled by a knock at the door. Opening it, she found what seemed like half the village, each person carrying something: clothes, toys, books, even an old crib. "We heard you could use a hand," said the local vicar, smiling kindly. "We're here to help however we can." Mary Claire felt tears of gratitude fill her eyes. I don't know what to say. Thank you, all of you." The house soon filled with friendly voices and helpful hands. Thomas, initially shy with so many strangers, soon laughed and played with the other village children. The twins were passed from arm to arm, filling the house with their happy coos. That night, after everyone had gone and the children were in bed, Mary Claire sat in her favorite armchair, exhausted but with her heart full. She picked up the phone and called Catherine at the hospital. "You won't believe the day we had," she said, her voice full of emotion as she recounted the community's generosity. On the other end of the line, she could hear Catherine softly crying. "Oh, Mum," she finally said, "I was so worried, but now I know they'll be okay, that you'll all be okay." Mary Claire felt her own face grow wet with tears. "We will, dear. It won't be easy, but we'll manage. Together." As she prepared for sleep that night, Mary Claire reflected on the drastic changes in her life. Just a few weeks ago, she was a lonely widow, her days filled with quiet routines and memories of the past. Now, her house was filled with life, laughter, cries, challenges, and joys. And the future was still uncertain, with Catherine's illness casting a shadow over them all. But there was also hope, love, and a new sense of purpose. Mary Claire fell asleep with a smile on her lips, the soft sound of the children's breathing drifting from the next room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new opportunities for love and growth. And she was ready to face each moment, fully embracing her role as the pillar of this newly reunited family. Autumn arrived, painting the trees in shades of gold and red as the Davis family faced their own emotional storm. Catherine's treatment had become a roller coaster of hopes and disappointments, each day bringing new challenges. Mary Claire found herself torn between the hospital and the house, juggling Catherine's needs with those of the children. Nights were long, filled with worries and silent prayers. One particularly difficult morning, after a night of especially intense chemotherapy, Mary Claire found Catherine sitting on the hospital bed, silent tears sliding down her pale face. "Oh dear," Mary Claire whispered, sitting beside her daughter and wrapping her in a gentle hug. "I'm so tired, Mom," Catherine sobbed. "Sometimes I wonder if it's worth continuing to fight." Mary Claire's heart tightened. "Catherine, look at me," she said firmly, holding her daughter's face in her hands. "Every day you fight is one more day with your children, one more day to make memories. That's always worth it." Catherine nodded slowly, breathing deeply. "You're right. It's just, sometimes it feels so impossible." "I know, my love," Mary Claire replied softly, "but you're not alone in this fight. We're all here with you every step of the way." At that moment, as if to prove Mary Claire's point, the door opened and Thomas entered, carrying a colorful drawing. "Mom, look what I made at school," he exclaimed, his eyes shining with pride. Catherine's face lit up immediately at the sight of her son. "It's beautiful, my love. Tell me all about school." As Thomas chattered excitedly about his new teacher and the friends he'd made, Mary Claire watched Catherine transform. The exhaustion and pain were still there, but so was a renewed brightness in her eyes, a strengthened determination. Thomas's adaptation to school had been its own journey of ups and downs. On the first day, he clung to Mary Claire's leg, reluctant to enter the classroom. "What if Mom needs me?" he asked, fear evident in his voice. Mary Claire knelt to meet his gaze. "Thomas, Remember what we talked about. You going to school is one of the things that makes your mom happiest and proudest. And I promise that if anything happens, I'll come get you right away." With one last tight hug, Thomas finally entered the room, casting anxious looks backward. But as the days passed, Thomas began to flourish at school. He made friends, fell in love with reading, and even joined the art club. "You know, Mom," Catherine said one day, flipping through Thomas's sketchbook, "I think he inherited your artistic talent." Mary Claire smiled, remembering the long afternoons she'd spent drawing with Catherine when she was small. "Maybe it's time I dug out my old paintbrushes," she joked. These small exchanges, these moments of lightness and connection, did much to heal the old wounds between mother and daughter. Slowly, Catherine and Mary Claire were rebuilding their relationship, filling the 15-year void with love, understanding, and forgiveness. One afternoon, while Thomas was at school and the twins napped, Catherine asked to see the old letters she had written over the years. "I want you to read them now," she said softly. "All of them. I want you to understand everything." With trembling hands, Mary Claire began to read. Each letter was a window into Catherine's life, her struggles, her joys, her regrets. Tears flowed freely down Mary Claire's face as she absorbed her daughter's words. "Oh, Catherine," she sobbed when she finished the last letter. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you." Catherine took her mother's hands in hers. "No, Mom, I'm sorry. I was too stubborn to ask for help, too proud to admit I was wrong. We lost so many years. But we're here now," Mary Claire said firmly, "and we'll make every moment count." Amid the challenges, there were also pure moments of joy that lit up the family's days. Like the morning Lucas, the quiet twin, surprised everyone with his first word. Mary Claire was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when she heard a tiny voice from the living room. "Grandma!" She froze, barely believing her ears. Running into the living room, she found Lucas sitting on the rug, a toothless smile lighting up his face. "Grandma," he repeated, reaching out his arms to her. Mary Claire scooped him up, laughing and crying at the same time. "Oh, my love, you spoke." She immediately called Catherine at the hospital to share the news. The joy in Catherine's voice was palpable, even through the phone. Not long after, Sophie also surprised everyone. During a visit to the hospital, the little girl took her first steps, determinedly tottering toward Catherine's bed. "Mommy!" she cried, falling into Catherine's waiting arms. The hospital room filled with laughter and tears of joy, the illness momentarily forgotten in the face of this everyday miracle. As the months passed, Thomas's backpack, once a repository of secrets and burdens too heavy for his small shoulders, began to change. Now, besides Catherine's precious letters, it held school drawings, small gifts for his mother, and even a journal where Thomas recorded special moments of the family, as he called them. One day, Mary Claire found him sitting on his bed, surrounded by the backpack's contents, a thoughtful look on his young face. "What are you doing, dear?" she asked softly. Thomas looked up, a small smile playing on his lips. "I'm storing memories, Grandma, like Mom did with her letters, so we never forget the happy moments." Mary Claire felt her heart fill with love and pride. Sitting beside him, she picked up one of his drawings. "Why don't you tell me about this one?" Thomas's eyes lit up as he explained every detail of the picture. His family gathered in the park, Catherine smiling in a wheelchair, the twins playing in the grass, Mary Claire beside them all, like a silent guardian. As Thomas spoke, Mary Claire reflected on the incredible journey her family had undertaken. The challenges were many and the future still uncertain. Catherine's treatment continued, with good days and bad. But amidst all this, there was love, hope, and a family that had found its way back to each other. That night, after the children were in bed, Mary Claire sat in her favorite armchair, a steaming cup of tea in her hands. She picked up the phone and called Catherine. "How are you feeling, dear?" she asked softly. "Tired," Catherine answered honestly. "But good, happy." A comfortable silence stretched between them. "Mom," Catherine finally said, "I want you to know how much I love you, how much I appreciate everything you've done for us." Mary Claire felt tears forming in her eyes. "So, my love, I love you too, more than you can imagine." When they hung up, Mary Claire sat for a long time, gazing at the stars through the window. The future was still uncertain, but she knew that, no matter what came, they would face it together, as a family. With a contented sigh, she rose to check on the children one last time before bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new joys, and she was ready to embrace every moment. Mary Claire's garden was in full bloom, a sea of vibrant colors under the gentle spring sun. The air was filled with the sweet scent of roses and the cheerful sound of children's laughter. It was hard to believe that only a year had passed since that fateful snowy night that changed everything. Catherine, seated in a garden chair, watched with a serene smile as her children played. Thomas, now 6, ran across the lawn chasing soap bubbles that Mary Claire blew for the twins. Sophie and Lucas, who had just turned 2, giggled and clapped, trying to catch the iridescent bubbles. "Who would have thought," Catherine murmured to herself, "that we could come so far in just 1 year?" Hearing the comment, Mary Claire approached her daughter. "Life has a surprising way of gifting us, doesn't it?" she said, sitting beside Catherine. The two women fell silent for a moment, absorbing the scene before them. Thomas had stopped running and was now helping Sophie blow her own bubbles, while Lucas watched with wide, admiring eyes. "He's grown so much," Catherine said, her eyes on Thomas. "Not just in size, but in spirit." Mary Claire nodded. "He carried a huge burden for so long. It's wonderful to see him finally acting like the child he is." As if sensing they were talking about him, Thomas looked their way and waved, a wide smile illuminating his face. Catherine waved back, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. "I remember when he arrived at my door," Mary Claire said softly. "So small, yet so determined." Carrying his siblings and the weight of the world on his shoulders, Catherine felt tears form in her eyes. "I'm sorry for putting so much responsibility on him. I was so desperate." Mary Claire took her daughter's hand. "You did what you thought best at the time, and look where it led us. We're all together now." Catherine nodded, wiping away a tear. "It's true. And speaking of being together," she hesitated before continuing. "The doctors said my latest tests were very promising. They think I might go into full remission soon." Mary Claire gasped, her eyes filling with joyful tears. "Oh, Catherine, that's wonderful." They embraced, years of hurt and separation, finally washed away by love and gratitude. "Mom, Grandma," Thomas's voice brought them back to the present. "Come see the sandcastle we built." Laughing, Catherine got up from her chair, leaning lightly on Mary Claire. Together, they walked to the sandbox where the children had constructed an impressive structure. "Wow," Catherine exclaimed. "That's amazing." "You're real architects." Thomas puffed out his chest with pride. "I made the towers, Sophie made the windows, and Lucas... Well, Lucas destroyed more than he helped, but that's okay." Everyone laughed, including Lucas, who seemed very pleased with himself. As the afternoon wore on, their small family celebration continued. Neighbors stopped by, bringing dishes to share and warm smiles. Mrs. Dawson, who a year before eyed the situation with suspicion, was now a constant and loving presence in their lives. "Mary Claire," Mrs. Dawson said in a quiet moment, "it's wonderful to see how all of you have blossomed. This house is alive again." Mary Claire smiled, watching Catherine help the twins plant some sunflower seeds. "Yes, it is, and I didn't even know how much I needed this until it happened." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in pinks and golds, the small party wound down. Neighbors said their goodbyes. The children, tired but happy, were put to bed, and finally, Catherine and Mary Claire found themselves alone in the garden. "Mom," Catherine began softly, "there's something I want to show you." She went into the house and returned a few moments later with Thomas's old backpack. Mary Claire felt a tightness in her chest at the sight of the object that had started this whole journey. Catherine opened the backpack and pulled out a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. "These are the letters I wrote to you over the years," she explained. "But there's a new one here." She handed Mary Claire an envelope, which the older woman opened with trembling hands. "Hush, dear mother," she began to read aloud. "1 year ago I was lost, sick, alone, desperate. I sent my children to you with nothing but hope and regret. I didn't know if you'd accept them, if you'd forgive me. Today, I look around and see a family. I see love, forgiveness, healing. I see my children flourishing under your care. I see the amazing mother you've always been, the wonderful grandmother you've become. We've been through so much, you and I. We lost precious years because of pride and misunderstandings. But now, looking back, I see that every step of our journey led us here, to this moment of redemption and love. Thank you, Mom, for never giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself, for loving my children as if they were your own, for teaching me the true meaning of family. I look forward to our future together, to creating more memories, healing old wounds, loving unconditionally. With all my love and gratitude, Catherine. When Mary Claire finished reading, tears streamed freely down her face. She looked at Catherine, seeing the same love and emotion reflected in her daughter's eyes. "Oh, my dear," she whispered, pulling Catherine into a tight hug. "I love you so much." They stayed like that for a long moment, mother and daughter reunited, love flowing between them like a powerful river. Finally, Catherine pulled away gently. "So," she said, a playful smile on her lips, "what do you think about making some plans?" Mary Claire laughed, wiping her tears. "What kind of plans?" "Well," Catherine began, her eyes shining, "I was thinking maybe we could do some renovations to the house. You know, make it more suitable for a family of 6. Mary Claire felt her heart leap. "6?" Catherine nodded, smiling. "If you'll have us, of course. I'd like us all to live together as a family." "Oh, Catherine," Mary Claire exclaimed, tears of joy returning to her eyes. "Nothing would make me happier." The two women spent the rest of the night making plans, dreaming of the future. They spoke of adding a new bedroom, planting a bigger garden, traveling together. When they finally went to sleep, the sky was painted with the first lights of dawn. Mary Claire paused at the children's room, watching her grandchildren sleep peacefully. Thomas, her little hero, hugged Catherine's old teddy bear. The twins, nestled in their cribs, looked like angels in their slumber. She felt Catherine join her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "They're amazing, aren't they?" Catherine whispered. Mary Claire nodded. "Yes, they are, just like their mother." Together, they closed the door softly and headed to their own bedrooms. The future stretched out before them, bright and full of promises. The old letters, once symbols of regret and separation, were now witnesses to their journey of healing and reconciliation. Kept safely in Thomas's old backpack, they served as a reminder of the power of love, forgiveness, and family. As Mary Claire lay in her bed, she reflected on the incredible year that had passed, from a lonely widow to the matriarch of a vibrant, loving family, from a mother with a broken heart to a complete, happy woman. The circle was complete, the family was united, and the future, oh, the future had never looked so bright. With a smile on her lips and gratitude in her heart, Mary Claire closed her eyes, ready to dream of the many happy days yet to come.